In 10 years on the job, I've seen mangled bodies, violent crimes, and too many broken families to count. But nothing prepared me for that 1911 call, the one that ended my career. My name is Ranger Marcus Bennett. I worked patrol out of San Bernardino County, California. Nights mostly, because rookies take nights and then it sticks with you. I'd gotten used to it, the silence, the long stretches of nothing, and then out of nowhere, the kind of call that makes your stomach twist before you even know why. That night was like any other. Cool air, desert winds pushing against the patrol car windows, the crackle of the radio keeping me awake. Then dispatch cut in. The operator's voice was tense. Unit 42, respond. We've got an open line, unknown disturbance, Crestview Drive. Unknown disturbance. Those two words usually meant drunk neighbors, animals tearing into trash, sometimes nothing at all. I acknowledged, hit the lights, and rolled out. The streets were quiet, almost too quiet, the kind of quiet where you feel watched but don't see anyone. Crestview was mostly dark. Houses lined up neat, but no porch lights, no movement behind curtains. I parked in front of 1423, the address dispatch had managed to pin down from the call trace. Windows blacked out, except for one faint glow at the back of the house. I knocked on the door. Nothing. Knocked again, harder. Silence. I radioed it in. No response at the door, and circled around. That's when I saw it. A small window cracked open on the porch side, light bleeding out faint and sickly. I pressed myself close and listened. It wasn't silence. Not really. There was breathing, uneven, labored, right on the other side of that glass. I eased the door open, it wasn't even locked, and stepped inside. The smell hit me first. Metallic, iron, blood. My flashlight cut across a hallway rug, edges frayed, and right down the center, a trail of fresh red leading toward the living room. My chest tightened. This wasn't a false alarm. The dispatcher's notes replayed in my mind. The caller had whispered, "He's here. Please help." Then gagging, then silence. No name, no details, just that one line. I knelt, turned them gently over. Their eyes were wide, darting but unfocused, lips stained and trembling, barely conscious. When I asked if they could hear me, the answer came in a voice so faint I almost missed it. "He... in the closet." I froze, slowly raised my light to the closet door. It was half shut, wooden slats catching the glow. The silence pressed down so hard it roared in my ears. I reached for the handle and pulled. The door creaked open. Clothes spilled forward. At the back of the closet, something shifted, curled low, like it was waiting. I thought it was a person at first, but the proportions were wrong. Limbs too thin, angles too sharp, head tilted too far to one side. And the eyes, yellow, glowing faint in the beam. It was breathing, slow, deliberate, watching me from the dark. I raised my weapon, voice breaking as I shouted, "Police! Show me your hands!" Nothing moved, just that steady breathing. Then the sound of footsteps behind me, heavy, urgent. Backup? Number. I turned my head for only a second. When I swung the light back, the closet was empty. No eyes, no shape. Nothing but hanging shirts swaying gently as if stirred by something that had just moved past. My backup unit finally burst through the front door, weapons drawn, voices loud. They secured the house, dragged the victim out, and swept every room. Nothing. No intruder, no forced entry, no broken locks. Just the blood trail that ended at the closet, like it had been swallowed whole. At the hospital, the victim barely clung to life. When questioned later, they couldn't give us a straight answer. They spoke in fragments. Eyes, watching, closet, over and over. Doctors called it trauma, shock. But the bruises were strange, some weeks old, some fresh, layered over each other as if they'd been happening for longer than anyone could explain. I tried to put it behind me, but the images stayed. Nights later, in the station, I walked past a janitor's closet. Just a plain metal door. But I swear I heard it again. That same strained breathing, shallow and close. My pulse spiked, sweat breaking on my neck. In 10 years on the job, I thought I'd heard it all. I'd worked the small towns, the desert fringes, the long highways where drunks spun their cars into ditches and bar fights bled out onto sidewalks. My nights were filled with the ordinary chaos of rural policing, domestics that never ended, neighbors screaming about fences, kids pulling pranks with BB guns. Calls that rattled you sometimes, sure, but they fit into a box. They made sense. That night began no different. I'd poured my third cup of bad coffee, the kind that tastes more like rust than beans, when dispatch cut through the quiet. Unit 42, open line, possible emergency, 911 trace in progress. I leaned forward, radio static crackling in my ear. Then I heard it, faint, broken by sobs. A child's voice, trembling, barely more than a whisper. "He's in the house, and he's not Daddy." I froze. Dispatch tried to keep the caller on the line, asked for a name, asked for an address. But the breathing turned ragged, sharp, like the phone had been clutched too tight. Then a low thud in the background, and just like that, the line went dead. I remember staring at the radio handset, waiting for it to come back to life, waiting for anything. My partner was across from me, boots kicked up on the dash. He smirked. Probably a prank. You know how kids are. But I couldn't shake the sound of that voice. It wasn't staged. It wasn't laughter hiding behind fear. It was pure panic, raw, the kind of sound that clings to you whether you want it to or not. "Prank or not," I said, starting the engine. "We're checking it out." The trace finally locked to Crestview Drive. That street had always felt wrong at night. Half the homes empty, shadows stretching too far under the street lamps. I hit the lights, engine growling against the silence, a pit tightening in my stomach. Because if that call was real, if there really was a child trapped in a house with someone, or something, that wasn't supposed to be there, then this was no prank. This was a nightmare waiting behind one of those dark doors. The trace brought us miles outside town, down a narrow road that cut through stretches of empty fields. No porch lights, no traffic, just the crunch of gravel under the cruiser's tires and the hum of power lines swaying in the wind. When we finally pulled up, the house stood alone against the tree line. A weather-worn farmhouse, its paint curling, windows dark except for a faint flicker upstairs. The front door was ajar. It swayed with the draft, creaking open and shut, like it was breathing. I killed the engine, and suddenly the silence pressed down on us, heavy, unnatural. My partner muttered, "Could just be squatters." But even his voice carried an edge of doubt. I stepped onto the porch, boards groaning under my weight, and knocked. Once. Twice. The sound echoed through the house, unanswered. I pushed the door with my palm. It gave without resistance, spilling us into a living room frozen in time. The air inside was cold, too cold for a house with no open windows. Furniture stood in neat order, but everything was coated in a thin layer of dust, like no one had lived here for months. Except the smell. Not decay, not rot, just the faintest trace of something metallic, sharp enough to sting the back of my throat. We stood listening. Nothing. Then, upstairs, a floorboard groaned under the weight of something moving. Slow, deliberate. I signaled my partner and crept deeper in. Each step seemed to stretch longer than it should, the silence growing heavier, pressing into my ears. We passed picture frames on the wall, family photos washed out from years of sunlight. One showed a little girl, no older than 7, her smile frozen, her hand held by a man whose face was turned just slightly out of frame. We reached a narrow hallway. A door was cracked, and from inside came a sound so faint I almost missed it. Breathing. Quick, shallow, like someone hiding. I raised my flashlight and eased the door open. Inside was a closet, doors half closed. I crouched and pulled them apart. There, pressed against the back wall, was a girl. Small, pale, her hair tangled, her knees tucked up. I told my partner to stay with the girl, but the truth was I didn't want either of us splitting up. Every instinct screamed at me to get out, but duty pushed my boots forward. The staircase rose in front of me, narrow, steep, each step warped with age. As soon as I set my weight on the first board, it groaned so loud it echoed through the house. Then another and another, each creak sounding less like wood and more like something exhaling under my feet. The air grew heavier as I climbed, dust motes swirling in the beam of my flashlight. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched out into shadow, doors open on either side. I moved slowly, checking each one. The first bedroom looked torn apart, dresser drawers yanked open, clothes scattered across the floor. A family portrait hung sideways, the faces pressed against the wall as if someone had turned it deliberately. The next room wasn't much better. Another photo frame face down on the nightstand, the bed sheets tangled, corners pulled like someone had clawed at them in panic. My light landed on a small shoe lying by itself under the bed. Just one. I backed out, every nerve telling me to keep moving. At the end of the hall was the master bedroom. The moment I stepped inside, the smell hit me. Thick, heavy, unmistakable. Rot. Not fresh, but old, clinging to the air like it had soaked into the walls. My flashlight cut across the room. The bed was neatly made, untouched, but every detail felt wrong. The drapes shifted, though no window was open. The closet door stood wide but empty. That's when I heard it. Low, steady, deliberate. Breathing. Deep and close, coming from just beyond the bathroom door. My hand tightened around the grip of my weapon as I approached. Each step made the sound sharper, clearer, until I could almost feel it pushing against me from the other side. I called out, "Sheriff's Department!" My voice cracked in the silence. The breathing didn't stop. With a shout, I kicked the door in. It banged against the wall, my light slicing through steam. The room was empty, no one inside, just the steady drip of water from the shower head. I turned, pulse hammering in my throat. Then I saw it. The mirror above. I reached for my radio, thumb pressing the transmit. Unit 42 requesting immediate backup, Crestview Farmhouse, possible intruder on site. What came back wasn't dispatch. It wasn't anything human, just static, loud, jagged, swallowing the words as if the line itself had been cut. I tried again, different channel, same result. My partner's radio hissed just as uselessly from downstairs. I swallowed hard, forced myself to think. There had to be another way. The old houses sometimes still had landlines. I moved fast back down the hall, found the phone mounted to the wall in the upstairs hallway. The receiver hung crooked, cord stretched. I lifted it to my ear. No dial tone, just silence. But the receiver was warm. Someone had used it, recently. A chill threaded down my spine. Back in the living room, my light hit the floorboards near the door. That's when I saw them. Prints. Not shoes, bare feet. Impossibly wide, toes splayed, the outline pressed deep into the dust. Too big for a child, too big for any man I'd ever seen. The stride was long, unnatural, each step sinking as if whatever made them carried impossible weight. The trail cut across the rug, through the kitchen, and ended at a heavy wooden door at the far end of the house. The basement. The door was bolted. From the outside. The metal latch sat heavy in my hand, cold, worn from years of use. Whoever lived here had wanted that door locked tight. Not to keep something out, but to keep something in. Behind me, the little girl's voice cut through the dark. She'd crept from the closet, clutching the frame with pale fingers. Her eyes were huge, her voice so small I almost didn't hear it. "Don't open it," she whispered. "That's where he comes from." Her words clung to me like ice water, and for the first time that night, I realized my hands were shaking. The basement door loomed in front of me, silent, waiting, like it knew the choice I was about to make. Every nerve in my body told me to walk away, to seal the door tighter and never look back. But training, pride, something in me pushed harder. I slid the bolt free, wood groaning as the door cracked open. The stench hit instantly, rot and damp earth, heavy enough to gag. I pulled my collar over my nose and swung the door wider. My flashlight cut into the dark, the beam trembling against a narrow staircase descending into black. Each step creaked under our boots, the air growing colder the deeper we went. The walls weren't drywall or wood, stone, rough and damp, as if the basement had been carved out of the earth itself. And on those walls, my light picked out patterns, lines, shapes, carved deep into the rock. Some looked like letters, others like symbols I couldn't place. They ran the length of the stairwell, gouged so forcefully that flakes of stone littered the steps. We reached the bottom, our footsteps crunching against dirt. The silence was thick, broken only by the slow drip of water somewhere out of sight. Then, from deeper in the basement, came another sound. A dragging. Something heavy, scraping across the floor, moving just out of reach of the beam. I raised my weapon, flashlight jerking toward the sound. The beam swept across the far wall and froze. There, in the corner, lay a crude bedroll, filthy and torn, reeking of mildew. Beside it, rusted chains bolted into the stone, and scattered in the dirt, small things, candy wrappers, a cracked plastic cup, and a stuffed bear, one ear missing, its fur matted with grime. The dragging sound stopped. Dead silence pressed in. My partner's breath rasped behind me, then he whispered, "I saw something." In the corner, I whipped the light back, heart hammering. Nothing. Just the shadows dancing against the wall, swallowing every shape the way water swallows a stone. But I could feel it then. Something in that basement with us. Watching. Waiting. And the silence was worse than the dragging had ever been. We stood frozen in that dirt floor basement, the beam of my flashlight shaking as it swept over the bedroll, the chains, that ruined stuffed bear staring back with one button eye. The silence was so deep it almost rang in my ears. Then, cutting through it, came a sound that made my blood run cold. Marcus. My name. Spoken soft, low but clear, from upstairs. I froze, throat tightening. It was my voice. Not just someone calling me, it was me. My own tone, my own cadence, echoing down the stairwell. My partner spun toward me, wide-eyed, whispering, "Jesus Christ, you heard that too?" Before I could answer, he stiffened. From above, another voice drifted down. A woman's voice, tender, strained with urgency. "Daniel, honey, it's me. Come up here. Please, hurry." I knew that voice didn't belong in this house, but he knew it. It was his wife's. She wasn't anywhere near this place, but the way his shoulders shook, the way he leaned toward the stairs, told me he wanted to believe it. Then the little girl's whimper cracked the dark. She had followed us down, clutching her stuffed rabbit to her chest, eyes wide with terror. "That's how he gets you to come closer," she whispered. "That's how he makes you listen." The words stuck in my skull like nails. I turned my light back toward the stairwell, but the beam faltered. The bulb overhead flickered once, twice, then burst with a sharp pop. Glass rained down, sparks hissing. In the darkness that followed, the stairwell door above groaned on its hinges. Then, with a thunderous crack, it slammed shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot through the stone walls, and just like that, the way out was gone. We were trapped, the black pressing closer with every shallow breath, and I knew whatever had lured us down here wasn't finished yet. The dark in that basement was heavier than night itself, pressing in, swallowing every corner the flashlight couldn't reach. When I swung the beam across the walls, I saw our shadows stretch with it. But they didn't move right. Too long, too jagged, bending at angles that didn't belong to our bodies. My shadow twitched when I was perfectly still. My partner's bent at the knees when he stood straight. It was as though something else was standing with us, using our forms to mask its shape. Then the whispers started. At first, faint, like a breeze carrying voices from far away. But they grew clearer, circling us. Men, women, children, layered over each other, speaking words I couldn't make out. The tones rose and fell, faster, harder, until they bled into something deeper. A growl, low, guttural, vibrating in my chest. "Enough!" my partner shouted, raising his weapon toward the shadows skittering at the far wall. The beam of his light shook with his hands. "Show yourself!" That's when it hit. Something unseen yanked him backward with a force that lifted him clear off his feet. He was gone from the beam in a blink, dragged screaming into the dark. I spun, light slashing through emptiness, heart hammering. "Daniel!" I tore toward the sound, boots sliding in the dirt. I found him seconds later, sprawled against the stone wall, unconscious. His vest was shredded, 3 deep slashes carved across it, jagged like claws. His breathing was shallow, but he was alive. I dropped to my knees, heaving him onto my shoulder, the weight near breaking me. Every step back toward the stairs felt like dragging through molasses, the whispers snapping at my ears, the growl rising again behind me. Then, without warning, the stairwell door groaned. I looked up, light trembling across the steps. It was open, wide, waiting. I didn't question it. I hauled Daniel up each creaking stair, lungs burning, until we broke back into the hall above. The door slammed shut behind us, rattling the frame. I spun, weapon raised, but the hall was empty, silent. No sign of what had pulled him into the dark. Nothing but the sound of his ragged breathing and my own heart, pounding like a drum in my skull. By the time I dragged Daniel into the front yard, my arms were shaking so bad I could barely hold him up. I saw the sweep of headlights cutting through the trees at the end of the drive. Backup. Finally. 3 cruisers rolled in, engines low, radios squawking. Officers rushed toward us, weapons drawn. I tried to tell them about the voices, the scratches, the basement. But when they went inside, the house wasn't the house I'd seen. The walls were bare. No carvings gouged into stone, no symbols etched deep. The floor was clean, dust settled smooth, no oversized footprints pressed into the dirt. The basement smelled of nothing but damp wood, no bedroll, no chains, no stuffed bear. Just emptiness, as if nothing had ever been there. They swept the upstairs too. The photos hung straight on the walls. The drawers were shut. The mirror was spotless, no fog, no warning scrawled across it. I called out for the girl, searched every room, every corner. She was gone. No clothes, no toys, no prints small enough to belong to her. Nothing to suggest she'd ever existed at all. And then dispatch chimed in over the radio, crisp and clear. "Unit 42, status check. We haven't had a call from your sector tonight. Do you copy?" I froze, staring down at my radio like it had betrayed me. I told them about the open line, the trembling voice, the words that brought me here. They checked, swore up and down there was no record, no 911 call logged from this house or anywhere near it. Daniel lay on a stretcher, coming around, the deep gouges still fresh across his vest. But no one could explain them, and no one believed me when I tried. I handed in my badge the next day, because I know the truth. 911 didn't connect me to a little girl. It connected me to something that wanted me inside that house. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still hear it. That call. The whisper looping over and over, broken by static. He's in the house. And he's not Daddy.